Biomes around the world, adaptations of species. For this lesson, you are going to be asked to identify and describe basic characteristics of biomes from around the world. This means you're going to learn about the climate, both precipitation, the amount of rainfall or snowfall, and the average temperature, both in the winter and the summer. You're going to be asked to be able to identify some native plant and animal species and make the connection. What adaptations do these particular plants and animals have which allows them to survive and thrive in the particular biomes? Let's start with this question. Why do different kinds of plants and animals live in different ecosystems throughout the world? So why do different species of plants and animals live and survive, for example, in the desert compared to the tropical rainforest? Why do different types of trees live and survive in the coniferous forest, for example, pine trees, compared to trees that live in deciduous forests, those trees that lose their leaves every fall? The answer: plants and animals have specific adaptations, traits that allow organisms to survive in different environments. For our study of biomes around the world, we will do a brief survey of the tundra, the coniferous forest, the deciduous forest, the desert, grasslands in both the United States and the savanna in Africa, and the tropical rainforest. Let's start with the tundra. The tundra biome. Take a look at the photos in the winter and in the spring and the summer. Very, very flat land, very few plants, and certainly covered in snow and ice in the winter. Location of the tundra, often referred to as the top of the world. The very northern parts of Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and the Soviet Union. The average temperature in the tundra is 41 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer and negative 17 degrees, minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. Average precipitation, 15 to 30 centimeters. Take a moment to record the average temperature and average precipitation on your data table. Now go ahead and flip over your packet to the map of the world that you have. Look at the map of the world here on this slide and identify where the tundra biome is located, all across the most northern regions of the world. The tundra biome on your map is identified with number 1. Please color all the areas that are numbered 1 on your map light blue. Note again, this includes the northernmost reaches of Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and the Soviet Union. On this next slide, it just illustrates and talks about some of the characteristics, basic characteristics of the tundra. You do not need to write any of this down yet at this time. The tundra is characterized by very short summers, 6 to 10 weeks. Even though the sun shines for almost 24 hours per day, the temperature never gets above 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The tundra is characterized by permafrost. The permafrost is a permanently frozen soil. Only during the summer does the top meter of soil thaw. This frozen layer prevents the water from draining or percolating deep into the ground. Therefore, in the spring and the summer, the upper soil layer is soggy, muddy, a perfect breeding ground for insects such as mosquitoes. And that picture that's shown on the upper part of the screen is that of a swarm of mosquitoes. No kidding, sometimes tourists need to put on full protection when the mosquitoes are swarming in the tundra. some other characteristics of the tundra. Look closely at the photographs. Very, very simple vegetation. No trees grow in the tundra. Also, very low diversity of organisms. Very few different kinds or species of organisms live in the tundra. Many birds, however, do migrate to the tundra during the spring and summer to feed on the insects. Think about just the mosquitoes that are there. Plenty of food for birds to eat. Because of a very short growing season, mosses, lichens, and very short grasses grow here. The wildlife, many of the wildlife that live especially throughout the winter in the tundra have extra layers of blubber and fur. And many of the animal species have the abilities to hibernate, and many birds migrate to help them survive the cold winters. Animal adaptations. Now as we go through the next several slides, on your data table it asks that you record at least three animals and how they have adapted to live in this biome. Specifically, what adaptation do they have that allows them to survive in the particular biome of the tundra. Polar bears. Polar bears have a layer of blubber that is approximately 4.3 inches thick. This layer of fat helps maintain a constant internal temperature. It protects them up to degrees of below freezing, minus 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Another adaptation of polar bears is their ability to hibernate. This illustration, this photograph, shows a mother polar bear and her baby cub in the background coming out of their den from the winter, or their cave. Hibernation is defined as the ability to pass the winter in a dormant state. Metabolic processes such as heart rate, breathing, and digestion are suppressed, allowing the animal to conserve its energy. An interesting fact, polar bear cubs are born during hibernation. Another example of an animal that's able to hibernate in the tundra is the Arctic ground squirrel. Picture on the left shows a very active Arctic ground squirrel during the winter, and the illustration, the photograph on the right, shows two ground squirrels that are hibernating. I know it looks like they're dead. They're really not. A photograph of those two Arctic ground squirrels hibernating. Time for a question. How does hibernation give the ground squirrel an adaptive advantage? A, does it provide protection from predators while they are, quote, asleep? Or B, does hibernation allow the squirrels to conserve energy when food is scarce? Time for a question. How does hibernation give the ground squirrel an adaptive advantage? A, does it provide protection from predators while they are, quote, asleep? Or B, does hibernation allow the squirrels to conserve energy when food is scarce? Answer B. Hibernation allows squirrels to conserve energy when food is scarce. Another example of an animal that is able to hibernate during the long winters in the tundra are chipmunks. Chipmunks hibernate too, but it's for short periods of time. Chipmunks lower their body temperature to near freezing, but wake up every few days. To raise their body temperature to near normal, they eat stored food, eliminate body waste. Then, they lower their body temperature again and repeat the cycle. Time for a question. Chipmunks, and humans too, are warm-blooded or endothermic animals. Is this adaptation classified as structural, behavioral, or physiological? Answer C. Being a warm-blooded or endothermic animal is a physiological adaptation because it is an internal metabolic process. Migration is an example of an adaptation. The tundra swan is a perfect example of an animal that migrates. The tundra swan migrates over 3,000 miles each winter from Alaska and Canada to Virginia and North Carolina on the eastern coast of the United States. This map shows the range through which the tundra swan travels, again over 3,000 miles traveled. Note the upper reaches of Alaska and Canada and traveling south-southeast to the eastern coast of the United States. Question: what type of adaptation is migration? A. Structural, B. Behavioral, or C. Physiological? Answer to the question is B. Behavioral. Any action an animal takes to survive is an example of a behavioral adaptation. These pictures show a flock of tundra swans migrating across the cold terrain and landing in a much milder climate where the water is not frozen and they can enjoy the winter. It makes sense to also recognize a special adaptation that birds have, and that is their bone structure. Birds have hollow bones, as you look at the illustration, compared to the bones of humans. Birds' bones, therefore, because they're hollow, have less mass than human bones. This adaptation reduces the amount of energy required to fly, allowing the birds to migrate very long distances. Time for a question. What type of adaptation is hollow bones? A. Structural, B. Behavioral, or C. Physiological? A. The answer is structural. Hollow bones is an example of a structural adaptation. Take a look at this photograph of the tundra in the summertime. On your data table, it asks that you list 2 to 3 plants and how they have adapted to live in this biome. You may note that there are no tall trees in the tundra. Plants here grow low to the ground, which prevents them from drying out during the summer and spring and fall. Many different species or types of grass live in the tundra. Grasses that live in the tundra have a very short reproductive cycle. This adaptation enables them to produce seeds for the next generation quickly before winter sets in. Lichen are the predominant organism that live in the tundra. Please look carefully at the photograph on the screen. These gray-green organisms are not plants. Lichen are actually 2 organisms, algae and fungi, living side by side. The primary role of the lichen in the tundra is to decompose rocks, which over time, over long periods of time, builds up the layer of soil. That was a brief overview of the tundra biome. Before moving on to the next biome, let's take some time to watch Tim and Moby's Brain Pop video on the tundra. Once you're finished watching the video, please take the review quiz at the end and record your answer for the tundra biomes on your data table. The next biome that we will investigate is called the taiga. The taiga biome, also known as the coniferous forest or the boreal forest, is located just below the tundra. Take a look at the photographs, and what do you see? Miles and miles of pine trees, coniferous trees. These trees are located just below the tundra in Alaska, Canada, Norway, Finland, and the Soviet Union. The average temperature is 59 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer and approximately 14 degrees Fahrenheit winter. The average precipitation is 40 to 85 centimeters. Please take a moment to record the average temperature and average precipitation in your data table. Take note of the location of the taiga across the world map. Now, flip to your map and color the locations of the taiga biome green on your map. That's all the area that is identified with the number 2. Please note this includes again most of Alaska, Canada, Iceland, Sweden, and the Soviet Union. Some general characteristics of the taiga. The majority of the trees are evergreen, needle-leaved trees called conifers. That means they have pine cones, such as the spruce trees, the pines, and the firs. Precipitation in the taiga is in the form of fog, rain, and snow. The taiga has long, cold winters, around or below freezing temperatures for 6 months of the year. The soil is acidic due to dropped pine needles decaying. This prevents most plants from growing there, but the acidic soil is perfect for growing pine trees. And take a look at the picture on the right. As you look at the floor, the lower levels of this forest, very few different types of plants, just some underlying grass. Because again, that acidic soil is not good for those plants, but the pine trees, as you can see, thrive there. Let's look at just a few adaptations that animals have, and those animals live in the taiga. Black bears. Black bears have large claws, and these claws allow them to climb trees. Time for a question. What type of adaptation is the act of climbing a tree? Is it A, structural, B, behavioral, or C, physiological? The answer is B, behavioral. Another animal that lives in the taiga is the snowshoe hare. The snowshoe hare, take a look at the photographs. Snowshoe hare in the spring and summer, and the snowshoe hare during the winter. And no, those are not two different species of animals. The snowshoe hare is able to change its fur color with the seasons. Camouflage is a clever adaptation, providing protection from predators in both the summer and the winter. The lynx is another animal that survives and thrives in the taiga. The lynx has very keen eyesight. The lynx also has tufts of hair on the ears, and these tufts of hair can be 3 inches long. What is the function of this adaptation? Most scientists believe the tufts improve their ability to hear sounds and sense vibrations. Over 300 species of birds nest and raise their young in the taiga because of large numbers of insects that live there also in the spring and summer. Of the 300 species, only 30 species stay for the winter. The rest of the birds migrate, a behavioral adaptation. And please note that the taiga bluet is one of the favorite insects of all those different species of birds. Let's take a moment now in your data table to identify some adaptations of the plants that live in the taiga. Pine trees. Pine trees are conical in shape of a cone, which helps protect the trees in the winter. Because of this adaptation, snow will slide down the pointed tips of the tree. This helps to protect the needles from freezing or drying and dying during the winter. Another adaptation of the pine trees are the needles. Pine needles are waxy and slender, which enables them to hold in water. By being able to hold in water, they are able to prevent drying out in the summer and freezing in the winter. That was a brief overview of the taiga biome. Before moving on, let's please watch the Brain Pop video on taiga. Again, when you're finished with watching the movie, please take the review quiz and record your answers on your data table.